And what's Paul's?
There ain't one.
Okay, so
It's the
start
same
us off.
button, isn't it?
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Well, my stories or memories might not be as funny as Neiman's. Maybe because I didn't have a funny childhood. But the first memory that I have, I guess, we lived in Luann. Now, I was born in Roanoke,
Can you
just
hear it?
outside Smackover.
No,
We moved to Luann,
it's just the one here.
like I said, maybe 2 or 3 years old. Lived in a big 2-story house there. Upstairs didn't have electricity, but most of our bedrooms were upstairs. I know Daddy's was right at the...
Clarence, if you can't hear it,
No, you can't turn it up like that one. You just, and I've got it wide open.
and the other one won't turn it up any, okay.
No, I'm not.
You're not
Just
supposed
turns
to
it
touch
on and
that
off,
one.
The
Okay.
volume and on and
Well,
off.
if you can't hear it,
It's okay.
Richie,
Huh?
would you look on the chest of drawers and get my other hearing aid and see if you can
Make
see
it
if
fit,
anything's
okay.
electrically.
We moved to Luann,
put it on
I
pause,
said,
Brenda. Or
maybe
Zane,
2 or
who's
3
gonna
years
pause
old.
back? Do you wanna move closer?
I think I'll go down on the other
Okay.
end of other end of the.
We got it turned up high. Okay, 3rd time's a charm.
Well, my stories or memories might not be as funny as Neiman's. Maybe because I didn't have a funny childhood. But the first memory that I have, I guess, we lived in Luann. Now, I was born in Roanoke, just outside Smackover. But we moved to Luann, like I said, maybe 2 or 3 years old. Lived in a big 2-story house there. Upstairs didn't have electricity, but most of our bedrooms were upstairs. I know Daddy's was right at the top of the stairs, and other rooms up there. Had a big wraparound porch, wraparound across the front and down the side. A lot of times when it come big rainstorms, we'd sit out there on the porch and watch it rain. And we didn't have television back in those days. Of course, that wasn't too long ago, maybe 65, 70 years. But anyway, I know when I was in the 1st grade now, Grandma Crowder, this was Daddy's mom, came to live with us. And when I was in the 1st grade in school, it must have been right after lunch, because we always, teacher would make us lay down and take a nap after lunch, and they woke me up. I don't remember which sibling or whatever had come in, but they come to get me because my grandmother Crowder had died. I remember going to the funeral, and Daddy's sister, I know Dale, Mama went with, and I went with her outside the church house. Now, this might have been during the visitation or something. I don't think it was actually during the funeral service itself. And Abel Dale rolled her a cigarette. And I thought that was so weird. I've never seen any of the older crowd at that time smoking. But I found out later that this was a medication that way for her to take. I think it was headaches or something other. But anyway, that's some of my first memories. And then another thing that happened while we lived in Luann, now my daddy was a deacon in the church. And he was a good Christian man, as was my mother. But Daddy kind of liked his, I don't know what you would call it, but I'd call it liquor. Maybe it was bootleg, but anyway, and he knew Mama wouldn't dare let him have it in the house. So we had a little garage out beside the house. I don't remember whether he actually parked cars in there or not, but had a bunch of other junk in it. And Daddy always had his bottle out there. Of course, you'll have to realize I'm next to the youngest of 14 kids. And several of them was boys. And as boys go, well, they found Daddy's hiding hole for his liquor, booze. And so one day, and I'm thinking it was Johnny, they decided to take a nip out of it. And in the round, they poured out Daddy's liquor, and one of them peed in that bottle. Daddy always came in from work in the evening, and he'd stop by there and he'd take him a good snort before he'd come in the house. So I think the boys was all lined up watching for Daddy to come home. Of course, like I said, we lived in a two-story house. They might have been in one of the bedroom windows upstairs looking out. And they saw him come in, and he went to his little hiding place, and he took him a good snort of that. And you can imagine what he did after he tasted that. But he knew he couldn't do anything because his mom would find out that he couldn't whip any of them. He couldn't fuss at them. So that was, and of course then the tale got out too. I don't know whether the boys told it or whatever, but anyway, we always found out later that that had happened. And during the time we lived in Luann, now you might look at me now and think I'm telling a story or something, but when we lived in Luann, Mama entered me into a baby contest, a beauty contest. And believe it or not, I won first prize. But they tell me that while I was standing on the stage, I was flipping my coattail up and down, and that might have had something to do with me winning first prize. But then after that, we moved to Standard Umstead. And there again, we moved into a two-story house. It was what they called the old heatridge. And there was part of it that was downstairs that Tookie's mother, she was a school teacher, and she lived in that part. And the stairway that went upstairs was, I guess when you come...
Do what, Clarice?
It wasn't her mother, it was a friend, a teacher.
Well,
Whose
see,
friend?
Her mother lived in the house where Jay and Tookie got married.
See, I didn't remember Miss Lawson living there.
She didn't. Peggy remembered it wrong. She was so young.
Okay, well, I have a question. Wait a minute. You're still recording, right?
Oh, are you recording?
Okay. What was I gonna
Let
ask?
me make sure I look up there.
Do you remember who came to the school when Grandma Crowder died and got Mom?
Who came to what?
Who came to the school and got Mom out when Grandma Crowder died?
Who came to the...
Who went to get Peggy at school? She was laying down taking a nap. Who went to tell her that Grandma Crowder had died? You don't remember who?
No, I just remember... Seemed like some of the... I don't even remember how I found it.
Found out. Okay.
Okay. Play.
That stairway was dark, 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 dark. I know they said Marie wouldn't come down the stairs unless she hollered got somebody to either open the outside door or turn a light on down there for her to come down. Then we moved 2 or 3 different places. We lived out down close to Miller's Bluff. And while we lived out there, there was 2 incidents that happened out there. We had this old car, and Mama kept it a good bit if she had any kind of chores or running around she needed to do. But we went to pick up Daddy from work one evening, and it was an old kind of car. I don't know what it was, but you turned the key on, but then you hit another switch or something to start the motor. So while we were waiting on Daddy to get off from work, I was fiddling with that key, and I broke it off into the switch. Of course, that didn't mean we couldn't drive it. It just meant that you couldn't turn it off. I guess kind of to lock it up or whatever. And that's the first memory I have of my daddy giving me a whipping. Because we got home that evening, and they say Mama and Daddy would always make us go out and get our own little switches But I don't remember getting the switch. I think Daddy must have found his own switch, and he tore me up good. And while we lived in this same place, it might have been this same vehicle we had, Daddy always had some crazy ideas of how to save fuel and this, that, and other. And I don't know what the lights had to do with saving fuel, but anyway, he'd crank up that car, and then he had to get out and under the hood and hook up some kind of switch for the lights to work. And I don't remember whether it was on Sunday night we were going to church or maybe one Wednesday night, but anyway, Mama was behind the wheel to start it up, and Daddy was out there hooking things up. I think Huey was standing on the running board, and maybe Marie and I was in the car. When Daddy got the lights hooked up, it was in reverse, and Mama must have let her foot off the clutch. And when it did, that thing went to going backwards. And it went backwards, and we went around the front of the house and backed into a tree, knocked Huey off. Needless to say, we didn't get to church that night. From there, well, we still lived in that area. We'd moved to another place out there. But I was in the 6th grade in school. You know, Standard Umstead had consolidated with Smackover. And I went to school, and my mama's birthday was in January. And I went to school that day talking about my mama turning a half a century old. I thought that was just so old. 50 years old, a half a century. But you know, when I turned 50 years old, I didn't think it was all that old. I got some children that's over 50 now.
Are y'all queuing our stuff or what?
She's trying
Now
to,
we are, see.
Okay.
Talking about family, I guess when we lived in Luann, of course, Wita and Leona had both married. Of course, Wita has a child that's older than I am. And so J.W., while he wasn't still at home, he had been in the service, and then he worked and maybe was home on the weekends and all. Vera got married when we lived in Luann. She married Tom Frazier, who was, families were close friends and all. So when we moved to Standard Umstead area, there was just Clarice and Clarence, Johnny and Huey, and me and Marie. While we lived out in the Standard Umstead area, it seemed like it was Aunt Laura had come along. And I don't know whether Grandpa Alger, this was Mama's daddy, was sick or whether Mama just wanted to go visit. Of course, money back then was scarce. You didn't really have the money to make trips like that. But anyway, Mama and Marie and I rode with them to Missouri to see Grandpa Alger and some of Mama's brothers that still lived up there. But then Aunt Laura and them, of course, was going on back to New Mexico. And we rode the bus back home. And I remember it was real crowded in the bus. Marie was just maybe 2 or 3 years old. Of course, she could sit in Mama's lap. But I know on this one section of the trip home, there wasn't a place for me to sit. And of course, in the buses, you had the middle aisle, but the seats were up on a little platform, like you stepped up to get in the seats. So I sat down there on the little ledge there where the seat was at, dangled my feet off in the aisle. That's about all I remember about that trip, but that was just, I could almost see the bus, seemed like it was kind of at nighttime, and sitting there. And then we lived in Mama and J.W., this was after he and Tookie married. I mentioned the Lawsons that lived in the part of the teachers with us. When Jay got out of the service, he come home and he met Tookie. This was Miss Lawson's daughter. And I think in 6 weeks' time, they got married. And, that might have been a hurried relationship, but Jay and Tookie both passed away a couple of years or so ago, and they had been married over 50 years, so I guess that short-term relationship, knowing one another a short time, it did last. But at one time we moved out to another place just outside of Smack over there, and Mama and J.W. was in partners in a little store building there. And, well, I forgot about Paul. He might have been in the service because I don't remember him living with us when we moved out in the Standard Umstead area.
He did or
But I
didn't?
know he come home.
Did Paul live with us or not?
Paul was in service.
Oh, he was in service, okay.
Leave, and he had married this woman from up there, Tex. She was a little petite, tiny woman, and Paul was a great big tall man, but she could sing. But anyway, Paul was very particular about his stuff, his vehicles and all such. And he had come home and they must have drove all night because he had gone in and laid down to take him a nap. And Clarice come along and she asked Tex if Ralph reckoned Paul would let them borrow his car for her and Ralph Smith to go get married. And Tex told him, says, well, I can't tell you, you'll have to go in there and ask him. So the story is told two different ways. Paul said Clarice didn't wake him up, and Clarice said he said it was okay for her to use the car. But to make a long story short, Clarice and Ralph used the car. Later on, Paul woke up and he went out and looked, and he just got really excited just because his car was gone. Somebody had stolen his car. And he accuses Ralph Smith of stealing his car to this day. Like I said, a lot of my stories is not the funniest in the world.
Okay, here's your chance to tell your version of that story.
Do what now?
Can you tell your version of that story? Did she tell it accurate?
Did she tell it pretty accurate?
Yeah, pretty much. He was laying on his stomach, just laying across the bed with his hands like that. And I kind of shook him a little bit, and I said, can we borrow your car? We thought we had to cross the state line in Texarkana to get a license. And he said, yeah, sure. I said, well, roll over a little bit and let me get the keys. I said, where's the keys? They're in my pocket. He rolled over, and I put my hand in his pocket and got his keys out. And Tex did whatever. She said, if Paul said yes, that was fine. So we took Ralph's dad's car. He was in his dad's car, but had something the matter with it, and he was afraid to drive it that far. I guess I don't know how far it was over there.
It's about an hour,
From Smack over to
maybe a little
Texarkana.
further. I bet
but Ralph's best buddy from Lackland was that he was stationed at Shepherd Field and Wichita Falls, and he lived down in around Prescott or somewhere, and so he wanted Evans to be with him when he got married. So we rode around a while trying to find him, and that's why it was 3:45 in the morning when I got married. I don't know why we thought we could get a marriage license at that time of morning, but we pulled into a restaurant, filling station, service station, and asked the guy if he knew where we could get a marriage license. He said, yeah, there was a lady, they called her a field clerk, that she just lived right up there somewhere, and she would do it. So he called her. He had a taxi there that had a drunk passenger in it. He was letting him sleep it off. He said, if you want me to, I can drive up there and wake this guy up and we can be your witnesses. But anyhow, he told us how to go, and she got up and issued us a license.
And this
I
was in
told maybe-
Texarkana?
Huh?
This was in Texarkana
Yeah,
that
but
you got married?
It was Texarkana,
Arkansas.
Arkansas. It was still I went in there. But after Ralph had been home since Monday, it was, it took him that long to talk me into marriage. We were gonna have a church wedding, but he kept telling me he couldn't walk down the aisle. He couldn't walk down the aisle. So but I'd got me a pretty suit and a corsage and all the trimmings and everything. So the field clerk lady issued us the license, and I guess we paid for it. Ralph never had any money because he got paid once a month and didn't get paid very much. But I worked at the paper mill, so I had a little money. So she painted my corsage on. We asked her if she knew where a Baptist preacher was, and she said yes, Reverend Burnside. He was a Baptist pastor, and she knew him, so she called him, and it was one of those houses that had 2 front doors, you know, one, because without air conditioning or whatever, and he had kinfolks all over the house. You could see them sleeping on pallets and then like they were looking up like that out to, he had a light on way back there where he was dressing, we could see kinfolks everywhere. So we got married out on his porch.
Oh, okay.
And Ralph said, what do you think we ought to pay him? I said, about $5. So he took a 10 out of my deal, and I had to kind of go easy on my lunches the next week at work.
Wow.
Because we got married Sunday morning at 3:45. He had to go back to the base Monday morning.
Mm.
And it was
Okay.
a short honeymoon, so
All right.
that was it.
And I don't have the best memory, but anyway, from there we moved to Stevens. The oil field company Daddy worked for there in the Smackover area, kind of paid out or whatever. And we moved to Stevens. At that time, it was just, Clarence may have already joined the service. He was in the Navy, and it was just Johnny and Huey and Marie and I. Now, Huey and Johnny both finished high school, in Smackover. And Johnny was going to college in Magnolia. And Huey went to work for some company up there. I don't know that it was the same company Daddy worked for. And we become friends with the Carter family. And we all went to church together, and they had 2 daughters, Dorothy and Helen. And Huey got to go in with Helen. And when Johnny would come in sometime on the weekend or whatever, well, he would go with Dorothy. Now, Dorothy was younger than Helen, and Johnny was older than Huey. But anyway, in the round to catch the bus. And as I was getting on the bus, I caught my hand in the door and cut my finger real bad. I thought they was going to have to amputate the end of my finger, but managed to save it. While we lived in Stevens, Mama, when anybody had a baby, Mama always had to go and stay with the new mother. I helped tend to the baby for a few days, maybe a week or so. And the oldest girl left at home was kind of in charge of cooking and that sort of thing. But earlier than that, Mama was teaching me, I was making my first cake. And we got it in the oven to bake. Of course, back in them days, you made layer cakes. I don't even know whether they had a sheet cake or like that back then. Everything was layered or pies or whatever. And after we got the cake in the oven, well, somebody come along, one of the siblings come along. Some kid was sick and they had to carry it to the doctor, and they didn't think they could do anything like that, but what Mama didn't have to go help them. So she left me all by myself with that cake making. Well, needless to say, I got to having trouble trying to stack that cake. They'd slide the layers would slide, all this, that, and the other, and she'd come back in, and I was squalling. I was so upset because I couldn't get that cake to do right. And she said, honey, said, don't worry about it. Said, I've always had a lot of trouble in that sort of thing. Said, I know one time when I had that trouble, said, we just dumped it back in the bowl icing, the bowl where you were making the icing, and said, everybody ate it like it was good. So that's what we did. And they might have lied about it, but everybody thought that was a good cake. From Stevens then, we moved to Spring Hill. And I was so devastated because I was in my senior year of high school. I guess it was about 6 weeks into my senior year of high school, and Stevens was a small school. If I remember correctly, there was either 22 or 24 graduating this year, 12 boys and 12 girls, and we had worked hard in our junior year and all in fundraisers because the senior class was going to Florida that year, and I was so excited. Now, Huey and Helen had married by this time, and they asked Mom and Daddy if I could stay with them and finish out the school year. The mayor of Stevens had a daughter that was graduating with me. Their names was Holcomb, and the girl's name was Dolores. And but Mom and Daddy know if the family moved, I had to go with them. Well, we got to Spring Hill, and I think there was like 75 graduating. And that was just, I'd never been to a big school like that, and that was just something really drastic for me. And to make matters worse, going across the state line from Arkansas to Louisiana, the requirements were different for the credit you had to have. And I had to have a science, and I had to take biology with the 9th graders. Maybe the 10th graders, but that was so degrading for a senior to have to go back and take a class. I failed the class. Good old school teacher, Mae West, I think her name was. I think it had been for hers. I might have flunked that. But while we was living in Spring Hill, Daddy had some horses that he had, you don't call it housed, but anyway, they had a stable out close to in the oil field where some of his wells was that he kept his horse. And I don't know who brought it in, but I was supposed to ride it back out in the field. They put me up on that horse. Of course, I wasn't the best horseman or horsewoman, however you want to say it. But and Daddy was following along behind me in the little car, truck, whatever he had. Well, that horse got running. I don't know whether some dog scared it or just what. And I didn't know how to stop him. I didn't know the word whoa. The horse might not know the word no. But anyway, finally, when Daddy was able to help me get the horse stopped, I was just about to come unglued because it scared the whatever out of me. While we were in Spring Hill, my mama passed away. And, of course, at this time, that was just Marie and me left at home. Johnny still hadn't married at this time, but he was in college, and he spent a lot of his time with Leona, one of my older sisters, in Smackover, because that was an easier place for him to be and still go to college and work. But, and like I said, it was just Marie and I left at home. Now, Marie is 6 years younger than I am. So when Mama died, I was probably 19 at the time. I felt like that I had to be the woman of the house. That I couldn't grieve and all that sort of stuff. I had to be strong for Daddy and for Marie. And so I kept a lot of that bottled up inside me. Well, after Marie got a little bit older, I went in the military. And while I was in the service, I had a nervous breakdown. Finally, all the grief and all from Mama's death and all just got the better of me. But anyway, I come back to Spring Hill. But before that, before I joined the service, I worked at the Power and Light office there in Spring Hill as a receptionist, taking orders or taking care of whoever comes at the front door, front gate, not gate or door, front desk, that's what it's called. And this man come in one day and he wanted a refund on his light meter. And I couldn't make him understand that there was a waiting period. And we just got into a terrible, terrible racket. And finally I had to call one of the other people in that had been there longer than I did and maybe knew a little bit more how to explain to this man just what the policy was. But he just got real hostile with me. And later come to find out, I got hostile with him, but I didn't think I did.
Right.
Later on, you'll find out why.
When Mama worked at the Power and Light Company, she said that there was a fella come in,
There was a what coming in?
a fella come in wanting a refund on his electric bill, and he just got real right, and she wasn't communicating in a way that he understood that there was a waiting period of process you had to go through, and I didn't know if she was talking about Grandpa Sullivan or if she was talking about Dad, but I just heard Dad say, he said that was my money, so that must have been Dad, because she says that she's going to connect that later on in her storytelling, but she never gets back to that and ties it in. Since it's 5:30 now,
Yeah.
and I know we,
recording?
yeah, keep on recording, recording. Because from here she goes into talking about us kids being born, about us kids being born. So if you don't mind, I would like to ask you, and maybe even Aunt Marie, if you have any memories of Mom that you could share.
Of Mom,
Can you share any memories that you have of Mom when she was younger? In particular, I would like to hear the one and get it on tape when she was over at your house and Ralph was working and you heard the racket, the one that had the gun and you putting the lipstick on.
oh, that was,
Okay, tell her.
what,
He's recording you.
he's recording it?
Yes.
Ralph would work like 12 straight graveyards. That was the last one. Peggy was there visiting, and Danny was about 6.
How old was Mom?
Huh.
How old was Mom?
I think she had just been in service and just got out, or she might have been in service still. And it was over there from.
Well, I'm 8 years older than Danny, and Peggy's 6 years older than I am. So
How old did you think Daddy was?
Danny was about 6?
Danny was he was 4.5 when we moved there. He was about 6.
Okay.
Maybe not that old.
So she was an older teenager then.
Well, she was older than a teenager.
Okay.
Because
And
if
I
Danny's 6, I would have been 14,
Okay.
and Peggy's 6 years older, so
Okay.
she was in her 20s.
Okay.
And I was scared of my shadow. I mean, and the house was up on piers. It wasn't on concrete foundation. And a church was on one side of us, and we had a fairly close neighbor, but her chicken yard was between our house and hers. She was a real sweet lady, real motherly lady, and she looked after me. We were real close to her. And anyhow, her name was Miss Goodfellow. So anyhow, that
And what
night-
town was this in?
Huh?
What town was this in?
Waterproof, Louisiana, off the river from Natchez.
Okay.
Ralph worked in Natchez, but it was cheaper up there in that small town. But that night, Peggy and I went to bed. I had a shotgun. We didn't have any pistols. He had a shotgun, 410 or something. He had 2 bullets in it. And at least now I have all kind of hand pistols and not one bullet at all. But I said even Barney Fife had 1 bullet. But that night, I guess we had been asleep. Peggy slept in there with me, and Danny was in 3/4 bed sleeping beside us. That's in the same room with us. And I had every door locked. The front doors, the doors of our bedroom and the other bedroom had the walk-through Jack and Jill bathroom or something. Anyhow, something woke me up. It was something underneath the house, like an armadillo or something. But it sounded like somebody going clomp, 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 walking. And I woke Peggy up and I said, Peggy, wake up, somebody's in the house. I said, you gotta come. Of course, we had the windows up so far we had nails over those so it couldn't be opening up to that and it was summertime. But I said, you got a call from Miss Goodfellow because I lost my voice. I can't holler. Scares me. So,
No
and
phone. You didn't have a phone.
oh no, no phones. And the noise kept keeping on and keeping on. And I hollered, you better get out of here. I got a gun. But I wasn't opening up. All the doors was locked. All the doors. And in fact, one time they sounded like they were, we had a window on that side and two windows toward Miss Goodfellow, so and the window was raised up just so high, and I stuck the gun. And the Mississippi River levee was behind our house, but cows and things grazed on it, and some of Miss Goodfellow's chickens. And but one time I raised it up and shot out the door, shot through the screen because I thought that would scare them off, but it didn't. It just kept. So that's when I told Peggy go after call. So she went like she was going to sing opera or something. And hollered, "Help, Miss Goodfellow, help, Miss!" And Danny woke up and said, "Hush, Aunt Peggy." And she said, "Danny, there's somebody in the house. We got to get Miss Goodfellow to call the police." He said, "I'll growl like a bear." Oh, hush, Danny. So and finally we saw a light, and like I said, her chicken yard was between us, and I saw a light going over there, and she hollered, so she's calling the police. And what I didn't know is that after she called, it was just one policeman, and she walked over to our house and knocked on the door, the front door, and we was in the back bedroom, and we didn't hear her. And she went back and told her husband, said, "Roy, they must have killed Clarice and that baby," and she was scared to death. But I told Peggy, I said, "The police are coming." I said, "I've got to put my lipstick on." I said, "Now you hold the gun while I put my lipstick on," and then I held it while she put her lipstick on. So the police finally got there and convinced us they were the police at the door. So we walked through the house carrying the gun. I'd already cocked it.
Oh.
I had one more shell. I wanted to kill Ralph. He only left me 2 shells, and I already used one of them. And we finally got to the door. The policeman, this older guy, and Miss Goodfellow was with him. We got to the door and unlocking all the doors. Got to the front door and unlocked it. He said, "Miss Smith, let me have that gun." Anyway, but that was our
Experience. Brenda.
Can you remember any other?
we never did hear, so it must have, things were still locked up back there at the kitchen door. It went out off on the low street. Everything was still locked up. We had to decide then, but the dark of night, I wasn't about to go through there and say it had to have been an armadillo.
Do you have any memories of Mom when she was younger? Any memories of Mom when she was younger?
Well, let's see, I had my friends, and she was much younger. She would have had different friends there in Luann, and then I married when I was 19, or was I 20? I was 19, and she would have been, I'm 6 years old. She would have been 13, so
Yeah.
she was just a little girl.
Do you recall the time that, because Mama tells a story about, I think it was Paul coming in, and he was going to take everybody to the movies.
But he wasn't going to take her. He had I don't know what it was, and Paul was just kind of set in his ways, and he just didn't, I don't know what Peggy had ever done to him, but he just kind of treated her a little bit bad. And everybody was going to get to go, but she wasn't going to get to go. And I don't know if Mama stopped that or what, but I know it upset Peggy, and, well, Peggy had crooked teeth, and I don't know, he just didn't like her looks or something, I don't know.
Were you part of the group that was gonna get to go to the movies?
I was gonna get to go, but I don't remember going. I think Mama said if we couldn't all go, him and Tex should just go by themselves or something.
Do you remember that?
No, not at all. Brandon, turn it off, okay?